The archival history of the social movement known as feminism officially begins in the mid-19th century, a period defined by the rigid legal and economic disenfranchisement of women. In the United States and Europe, the pure reality of the era was recorded in the coverture laws, which dictated that a woman's legal identity was effectively subsumed by her husband upon marriage. Documented records from this time show that women possessed no right to own property, no claim to their own wages, and zero participation in the legislative process. This systemic exclusion created a clinical baseline of inequality that remained unchallenged in official archives for centuries. The movement was born of a documented biological and economic necessity for survival and agency within a rapidly industrializing world. The first formalized push for change is archived in the Seneca Falls Convention of 1848. This gathering produced the Declaration of Sentiments, a primary source document that utilized the framework of the Declaration of Independence to list the specific grievances of women. Archival data notes that the primary focus of this era, later known as first wave feminism, was the pursuit of suffrage, the legal right to vote. The movement was characterized by high-stakes political agitation and a clinical focus on dismantling the private sphere to which women were legally confined. It was a period of extreme physical and psychological stress for the advocates involved, as they faced documented resistance from the established state and judicial systems. Susan B. Anthony remains the premier archival anchor for this struggle. In 1872, Anthony was arrested in Rochester, New York, for the act of casting a ballot in the presidential election. The subsequent clinical record of her trial, United States v. Susan B. Anthony, provides a clear look at the state's refusal to recognize women as legal citizens with constitutional protections. Anthony was fined $100, which she documented her refusal to pay. The archival file on her life shows decades of continuous travel and public speaking, often in hostile environments where she faced physical threats and public humiliation. Her mission was a long-form exercise in endurance against a legal framework that refused to yield. By the early 20th century, the movement entered a state of heightened tactical intensity. Archival records from both the UK and the US document the shift from peaceful advocacy to civil disobedience. Suffragettes were recorded in police files for picketing the White House and engaging in hunger strikes while incarcerated. These individuals were subjected to the clinical trauma of force-feeding and solitary confinement. The documented reality was one of systemic violence used by the state to suppress the demand for legislative equality. The resistance remained absolute until the geopolitical shifts of World War I necessitated a change in labor and social structures, leading to the eventual archival confirmation of the 19th Amendment in 1920. The second wave of feminism, emerging in the 1960s, shifted the archival focus from political rights to socioeconomic realities. Clinical data from this era highlights the gender pay gap and the documented exclusion of women from higher education and specific professional fields. This period was characterized by a push for reproductive agency and legal protections against workplace discrimination. Primary records show a rapid increase in female labor participation, which fundamentally altered the global economic landscape. However, the movement also faced internal archival shifts as different demographic groups documented their unique struggles with the movement's leadership. The reality was a complex, multi-layered transition that impacted every sector of the documented social order. As the movement progressed into the late 20th century, the archival data began to reflect a broadening of the movement's scope. This era, often documented as the third wave, focused on the deconstruction of social norms and the inclusion of diverse cultural identities. Records show a shift toward addressing issues of personal autonomy, language, and media representation. The movement became less centralized, resulting in a clinical data set that documented a wide variety of local and global advocacy efforts. This fragmentation reflected the increasing complexity of the social landscape and the documented need for a more nuanced understanding of institutional power. The archives record this as a period of significant theoretical and tactical expansion. In the 21st century, the movement has utilized digital archives to document and organize large-scale social shifts. Modern records highlight the fourth wave, characterized by the use of global communication networks to address systemic harassment and institutional accountability. Clinical data from this era shows a significant increase in the public documentation of personal narratives, which has influenced legal outcomes and corporate policies. This period is marked by a focus on transparency and the forensic analysis of long-standing social structures. The documented reality is one of rapid information exchange and the continuous monitoring of legislative progress across international borders. The file on modern feminism is characterized by its high-velocity digital footprint. Today, the archival record of feminism is a global data set reflecting ongoing transitions in power and agency. While many foundational objectives have been codified into law, modern data continues to record disparities in leadership roles and economic stability. The movement has evolved into a clinical study of power dynamics within the contemporary world. The archival file on the pure reality of feminism remains open, as each new decade adds documented outcomes of policy shifts and social change. The history of the movement is a factual constant in the study of human civilization, representing the longest recorded transition of a social group from disenfranchisement to institutional participation. The record is complete and finalized for this archive.